Shinji Labram Zata Sora Kungajar Tavi Mangum Kesram Zambim Dam Trajan, Zim Josaran Jogan Makatar Sega, to Jenda Makani Chiran Jitan Samji Gonjaba, Lomba Makaro, Dano Pam Sora, Urgin Solon Pamir Dombon, Kumaron Shon Jim Sandom Sandom Farnara. Bamam Johnny Jala, Bamam Johnny Dono, Bam Zor, Chuzon, the Turkey Gombani, Usayan Zolon Kijanas, the Gino Turkey Rodon, Kamjan Chuji, Jero, Kijam, Mazan Kim General Yolasher, Kundazambor Monum Numbers, Chichi Jaram Trelegens, Banjan, Lami Jala, Zoran, Jimmy Sonja Zombie, Lava, Banzola Bassam, Yondan. Ibandem Jonerum Bojem Johardon Lam Dasham Zara Kanda Soldier Tongan Jirtena, the Soloma Kara Council, Thunder Tumba Chuchi Chambeb Nyambrundo Badam Jendaraja, Haika Download Jerko, Tumam Daldam Kanon, Druagan Gidanum Jazamba, Tamjerka Doga Jotanto, Namkadamian Besimchan Damchichi Tondo, Tandelana Payan, Doper Salgigi. Kumonum Boche Dobrasha, T-shirt, Tambichu Ganjasan, Tonyam Solon, Yam, Samba Shanchim showed the Tuki Badam Jede San Sir, the Lakan Sambra Chevy Chuna.
The chanting that I just did is the one that usually chanted by lots of Khenpos in Tibetan Buddhism. They would then first prostrate and supplicate to all the lineage masters and Shakyamuni Buddha, and then Padmasambhava and Mipa Rinpoche, as well as your root guru and come and listen to the Dharma, calling upon them to come and listen. I think this is the ones that done that for around 30 years, because in the for the Chinese disciple, I think the most I would do is that I would chant. The profound Dharma is so difficult to hear and difficult to encounter for eons, and now I have the opportunity to listen to the Dharma. Please grant your blessing. I just chanted in Tibetan. I haven't chanted it for about 30 years now. I think many people probably studied this book, Finding Yourself. It has the commentary on 37 practices of Bodhisattva. I think back in 2007, I taught this 37 practices. Today I'm going to give you the oral transmission of 37 practices of Bodhisattva, and then at the same time I will pick a few stanzas out and explain or listen to the oral transmission of of this text for many times, but we should not be content because that we studied it already. I know many of you have only 37 stanzas, but practicing it is really difficult. Phuntsok Rinpoche, in his biography, it is stated to this teaching for over 150 times. I myself have taught it for many times. I can teach, but when it comes to practicing each and every, I think we should try our best to practice it as much as we can. We should not be too hopeful nor too fearful of our own actions. In chanting the mantra, but I think in terms of the actions, you should then really monitor and maybe progress. I really think that it's quite important to restrain your enthusiasm because, yes, it's good to have devotion, but sometimes this kind of devotion is too obvious. Because in different groups, in different environment and situations, I think Buddhists should have certain self-restraint based on just show your emotion or show your devotion so bluntly when it's not necessarily a skill. Who are Buddhists, I really hope that you could learn skillful means to be more skillful in propagating Dharma as well as many of your actions. Otherwise, if you're too blunt, then it's a sign of lack of skillful means. And this is really important for you to learn. Life. I noticed that most of you are very diligent in chanting. This morning, I met some lay practitioners who told me that they can chant 90,000. Of course, people are different. There are people who can't sit straight for 2 hours. There are people who can sit for a few hours very diligently, attentively. It's really nothing and could be done within 40 days, within a few days. Or for those people who can't really have this kind of chanting, just as yesterday I asked some he can only chant 20,000 a day.
사도 몸부터 요래. 아, 吃你. 今天他也是2万遍.
Today he also finished chanting 20,000 times.
아, 37,000.
37,000 within one day? Okay. Of course, this number is also necessary. To keep counting is also necessary. Yesterday, I mentioned about the 10,000 hour rule. If a person who goes the 10,000 hours of practice in dedicating in their field of work, and then they can become a professional in that field. Nowadays, why do we need to count the numbers? Why do I have to do 10,000, 50,000 of preliminary practices? And why to keep? You will then eventually have the quality of the practice. In terms of studying Buddhism, maybe there are people who would say that why studying it? But for lots of people, in order to change your habitual pattern that you accumulated from beginningless time, you definitely need to put some efforts in doing so. Stop such effort, and this kind of effort and diligence is extremely important. That is called the diligence with persistence, the diligence with and faith in the Dharma and in the Guru, then you won't be able to continue to persist in such kind of diligence. So through the last few days, I do notice that many of you have made great progress. And some of you who are rather progressing in a very slow but steady way. Everyone's very different. But in any cases, I think we should help. Also, I would like to pay my gratitude to all of you who are volunteers. You have worked very, very hard. Not only that you cooked for everyone, you were managing the center over here. But if you're too enthusiastic, I think it might not be positive. Oh, noodles for sale, noodles for sale. And some Tibetan would hold some milk and say that milk on sale. And some a small voice enhancer and also chanting and also giving advertisement of selling. Well, you're probably too enthusiastic in terms of peaceful and skillful action that would fit into the situation and environment. Whatever you do, do not disturb others' mind. And whatever happens, do not lose the mind of joyfulness. You should not lose their joy. Anyhow, I really want to say that thank you to everyone who is serving the Sangha voluntarily, who is serving the Sangha quietly. Are not making a big sound of what they've done, but very quietly, but serving for everyone. They're just like a little and without those of you who works in parts of this machine, we won't be able to operate smoothly. So I really want to show to all of you. About 20 to 30 years ago, we didn't have that many people who would come to Laronggar. Not only half of the people. But nowadays, yes, we do have better material providings, but people's expectation also accelerated. However, I really think that you've already also tried to adapt to the environment as much as you can. Participating into this service to all the practitioners very proactively, and you've provided lots of service to the whole Sangha. Everyone, I think this kind of spirit is very much needed. As Buddhists, I think it's very important to remember that what is Sangha? Sangha is a group of people who are Buddha taught very clearly on the spirit of teamwork, not only teamwork of lay practitioners, but also teamwork of this team is really important. Once you are in a team, in a group, then it's very easy for you to go along any group to practice and to study with, and it's very easy for you to fall behind and get lazy and then eventually fallen out of this group. Buddha's teaching of gathering this group of people is called Sangha, and that's the meaning of the Sangha. And this time it really shows how we get together and practice together as a Sangha. In this world nowadays is the kind of group and community that has synergy, that have framework and management, proper management, and who can work together, who have in the team, in the community is willing to take up the responsibility. And if we can create such kind of a Sangha, such kind of a community, then we can continue for hundreds and standing on the giant's shoulder and talking about how we should consider how Buddhism should develop in the future. I'm not standing. In fact, I'm sitting on a high place, not standing. I'm not really being polite. Especially when I look at the development of this world in terms of how other religions develop, how the external world change, I often pound on how we can maintain our community so that it could last for a long, long period of time later. And also give our parts in it. Now I'm going to give the oral transmission of 37. And I really wish that you could read into it and study it. In the West, there are about over 10 versions of commentary on 37 practices of Bodhisattva. That's only English. On top of that, there are translations into Spanish, French, German. Many European languages. Teaching is translated into those languages. So this teaching is extremely important. Although only 37 stanzas, I want to then write more stanzas. I told him that, well, even if you write hundreds of verses, I don't think your verses will be more popular. I think that inside this 37 stanzas, it has unique blessings and powers. In any groups, in any community, any countries, any places that people gather, the people around anywhere in this world. Back in 2017, according to my diary, I taught the 37 practices. The 37 practices of all the Bodhisattvas, and in total 16 times. In 2018, I taught when I went out to teach in 2018, there are places that's not really convenient. Chanted on my own at least once in different cities. So I call up on you, wherever you are, if you went to Malawi or develop Syria or those places, I think you should also go into those cities and at least chant it to yourself, the 37 practices of all the Bodhisattvas. So the people and the place. Pongso Rinpoche said, even if you can chant it without any people listening, but it will benefit the animals and all the other beings that we cannot perceive. To all sentient beings and bless them to all generate the mind of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is necessary. Comes with a cause as well. Either you studied it in your previous lives, or you've studied it in this lifetime, such as you study and contemplate in this lifetime and then generate bodhicitta. In our modern time, I think that this teaching and the bodhicitta is so much needed, especially in this complex world, in this chaotic world. If we don't have bodhicitta, then everyone's so selfish, and the suffering that comes with such selfish is immeasurable, including all of you who are sitting here. If you don't have bodhicitta, then I think if you have money or not, if you're young or old, you will suffer. Because all the suffering comes from selfishness. But if you don't have wisdom, you don't have the wisdom of emptiness, you continue to use the solid grasping to explain and to view your life, you also have lots of suffering. Over here, I think in my audience, you probably are thinking, without Buddhism, I think I cannot live in this world anymore. I think that's very true. And now I'm going to give the oral transmission. The framework or the outline of 37 practices of Bodhisattva, at the first it talks about the determination of making such teaching, which is benefiting all sentient beings. And in terms of the content, it has the preliminary and the actual practice, and then the dedication of merit. In the preliminary, it talks about to rely on the guru, to stay at a silent place to practice. In total, there are 7. And then in the actual practice, it talks about the 3 levels or 3 kinds of people with different capacities. The capacity of lower and medium and high. The ones of lower capacity, then they are afraid of suffering. Therefore, they long for the eradication of suffering. And then the medium capacity talks about longing for liberation. And then the higher capacity talks about 2 types. One is relative bodhicitta, and the other one is ultimate bodhicitta, where it talks about emptiness and how to then transform everything into practice. Where it talks about whatever other people says about me, slandering or praise, whatever I lose or gain, I will also transform them into practice. The suffering and the bliss, I'll also transform them into the practice. So this transformation, transforming everything into or onto the path of liberation. How we face other people slandering, when other people slander us, we can't really transform that onto the path of liberation. When there's suffering, we hold onto suffering so solidly. But if we can then transform it or change it and see it from other perspective, I see it's suffering, but I don't grasp on it. I know this is suffering, but this could then work for my favor. For example, this morning I had a meeting with the volunteers over here. I told those volunteers and saying that do not take other people's complaint as an insult, because many people would say that when there are people complaining or slandering about me, then I lost my motivation to work for others, serve for others. This is not necessary. This is not appropriate either. When other people slander or complain about you, then you should think about whether you did something wrong. If you did, then you accept it. If you didn't, then just let it go. And when you observe it and then can quietly transform it onto your path, this is the practice of Mahayana practitioners. People nowadays in the society, they all praise the ones who have high social status, who have wealth, and who has all the nice things, enjoy all the resources of the society. But when you lost all those kind of privileges, then people would slander you. That's just a natural rule of how people think in the society. But no matter what, you should take any kind of situation as a favorable condition for your practice. People nowadays, they are desperately in need of Mahayana's teaching, which is just a slight change of mentality. And if you can do that switch, then anything in your life is working for your favor. So this is the framework. I'll continue with the oral transmission.
Jetrinam Gilolam Shebrasha, Donjin, Yaka Topin, doesn't quorum solid tradition, and Domsando Yerame Bana, Yansam Gomba Jetri Lanayan, Ninji Cholan Dojo Chertorio, Jai Chola Jetamet, Landru Jibutamano Jan, Fire Pond Jetri Lanayan, Yering and Family, no more Jinjo, Nayame, give young Rubatan, Chulan Institute, Wemba Timber Jetri Lalan Yen. Yan Dropam Zashi Susur, Bapi, Norze, Likim Jonkan, Nashim Jumbu, Send of Lutan Yeti Laglan.
Over here, it talks about the family and friends who we rely upon. They will then depart from us, and the wealth that we possess, they also will be left behind. Same as but the consciousness of the guest who launch in our body will then continue on this journey. Although everything will be left behind, but we have to be prepared for the time to depart. Friends and relatives. It's quite important to care for the relatives and friends. Some people, they do not really care about the friends and wealth. Not only that, they would take advantage of the trust of their friends and relatives. But we should be prepared at all times. On one hand, we should be really gentle and kind to them. On the other, we should be prepared that we can leave them at any moment. Not only friends and relatives. In fact, at a certain time, you will depart from your good spiritual friends or your guru. Similarly, your wealth and all the assets you've gained in this world nowadays, it's very easy for all the wealth to disappear within a moment. So when we have it, it's important to save part of it, and then we should spend part of it on virtuous things. Otherwise, you will be left with nothing. Let's not grasp onto this lifetime's friends, relatives, and wealth, because you will definitely leave them behind. The suffering of samsara is so difficult to endure. And all of this suffering comes from the previous misdeeds that we've done. According to the 100 stories of karma, it talks about it has this verse where it says that even after hundreds of kalpas, the karma one created would never perish. Once the cause and conditions meet, one has to experience the corresponding results of the past. In fact, this teaching comes from the Sutra of a Heap of Jewels. This is very similar to the teaching of the 100 stories of karma. This is a teaching of lower capacities. The praise of all bodhisattvas to strive towards the goal, which is the supreme state of changeless everlasting liberation, since all the happiness of the three realms lasts but a moment, and then is quickly gone, just like a dewdrop on the blades of grass. I'm not sure if you have heard of this teaching in the Dhammapada Sutra. In fact, this story from Dhammapada Sutra where it talks about there was one king who was enjoying the entertainment from a party with 4 other kings. The 5 kings gathered together and enjoying this wonderful party that's quite luxurious, which has everything in it. So the first king then asked the other 4 kings, what do you consider is the happiest thing in this world? So the first king said, well, entertainment, games. And then the second king replied, saying that the happiest is music, different sounds and instruments. That's what he prefers. And then the third one said, the happiest is wealth. And then the last one said, is love. And then the king who asked the question said that, well, I don't think neither of you answered this question correctly. Because whatever you said was enjoyment for a moment, but then it becomes the source of suffering, because all the happiness will then transform into suffering in a very short period of time. Therefore, what we should look for, that is the ultimate happiness, is the kind of happiness that doesn't have desire. This king is quite a great king who is very deep in terms of contemplation and understanding. He sees through the entertainment, the truth of entertainment, the truth of arts, music, and love and wealth, which all appear to be enjoyable at the beginning, but eventually will become the source of suffering. So all the happiness, the momentary happiness, is just like the dewdrops on the blades of grass. So this morning I was walking down the hills and I saw the beautiful grass, the beautiful clouds and sky and sunlight, but they're all impermanent. To generate bodhicitta, in Avatamsaka Sutra, it talks about the merits of 130 types of merits of bodhicitta. This is very difficult to do. Even if I care for others as if the other person's as my own child, but the other person treats me as an enemy, but still, I will care for that person like my own child is ill. I will care for that person like such. That's the practice of Bodhisattva. This is genuinely care for the sentient beings. In the 400 stanzas, it says that for people who have hatreds towards us, then we should be even kinder and more compassionate towards the other one. The Mahayana teaching is really wonderful, but the practitioners are not there yet. According to Vinaya Sutra, I think there's a story. When Buddha was still at causal stage, there was a king He is the kindest king, never generated or had any hatred or anger towards anyone. And all the poor people, sick people would go to the king and ask him to help them. And once there was an ill person who went into palace and asking for help from the king. The doctor then told him that, well, it's very difficult disease to cure. What you need is the blood of someone who never generated aggression. And then the king started searching all over the kingdom for the sick man, but couldn't really find anyone until at the moment he remembered that he never, in fact, generated hatred or aggression. People around him all said that he never had been angry. He asked his nanny when he was young, and his nanny said that no, you never had any aggression or anger when you were young. And then he asked his mother, had I ever had anger when I was young? And then the mother told him, no, I've never seen you being angry or had aggression. Not only that, in fact, while bearing you, I myself never had anger. And then he thought to himself, oh, this is wonderful. Then he started offering the blood of himself to the sick person. Every day, a big bowl of fresh blood from himself. And after 6 months, he became really thin and frail. The celestial being at that time, upon seeing that, was extremely touched and felt that this kind of person is so precious to stay in this world. Therefore, they decided to then help him and give him the celestial Amrita, and he then recovered from his health. And the sick person, on the other hand, upon recovering from his illness, instead of having gratitude towards him, he started slandering in front of others and saying that, well, the king didn't do anything for me. He only gave me the blood that he doesn't want. And at that moment, saying those words, because of the karma, the negative karma that he created, at that moment he died. Are there any of our practitioners who never had aggression? In fact, what I know is that lots of people who only stay with others for 1 or 2 nights, they started having some quarrels with their roommates or even fights with their roommates. It's very difficult to be that kind. But there are people who are really kind. They only think about benefiting others. But there are people in this world who are the complete opposite. Fame, wealth are as much as this whole world, but still there's no pride. Buddhists who are celebrities or have a high status, it's very easy for them to generate a sense of pride and arrogance. But for Buddhists, I really think that we should then maintain humble, because humbleness would be very beneficial to all of us. For the universal monarch who have all the fame,
도부 용던 란치 체당다 지정 시장 집반 배런 강라진 즉 기병우는 찬라 동화 제지 러는 저들는 드더 그런 거 sem력도니 주빔 타당 대니 신의 종점 참만나 일람없이 제지 러는 이切现象是自己的心
Everything is the appearance of our mind, and the mind is devoid of which resolve around dualistic notion of perceiver and perceived, in knowledge that all these appearances are but the mind itself, whilst the mind's own nature is forever beyond limitation of ideas. This is the stanza that I really enjoyed when I was 23 years old, and when I just came to Larongar. I was a young monk. I would then, during the day, attend the Dharma assembly, and then whenever there's time, I would go to an old Lama's place and listen to the teaching of 37 practices of Bodhisattva. When I heard this stanza, I was really in awe of it. I'm not sure why, but I was. At that time, I asked many questions. I had many questions as well. I was in the district of Muniju, and it is only later on I understood this. When encountering things one finds pleasant or attractive, consider them to be like rainbows in the summer skies, beautiful in appearance, yet in truth devoid of any substance. I know there are so many rainbows nowadays appearing in Larongar, all different types. I see it online, actually. But to this kind of rainbows, do not grasp on it. Just as anything in this world, the wealth, the fame, and all this pleasant living, they're just like rainbow as well. At that moment, when you're enjoying it, it's nice. But it doesn't have any intrinsic meaning or intrinsic existence. The Buddha said that everything is illusory-like, is dream-like. Ronsum Pandita, in his Mahayana Charya, it says that once we know that all Dharma is dream and is illusion, then this person is already then attained the Mahāti. Ronsum Pandita said three things, but I can't remember. Maybe I'll post it on my Tibetan Weibo. This Mahayana Acharya, it quoted this. This one is really important. Once you understand everything is illusion, is dream, then then attain the realization of Mahāti. Yesterday, someone said that he is a Tathagata. During the time of seeing us, then he was crying. So I saw Tathagata crying yesterday. Maybe Tathagata has anger as well. For Buddhists, if you don't know what is Tathagata, what is Bodhisattva, you have no idea who they are. And then think of yourself as Tathagata. Nowadays, with Photoshop, you Photoshop yourself on top of a lotus and then consider yourself as Tathagata. That's not good. In Hong Kong, in Taiwan, in mainland, in Tibet, Plateau now, there are people who call themselves Tathagata and Bodhisattva. This is such an insult to Buddhism and insult to yourself, really. Not benefiting to yourself. This is not good. In fact, this is very dangerous. How much time do we still have?
对吧？一是吧？语数是吧？
From Yushu.
要说，真的吗？那个，讲的吗？那个，哦， Jano mani the Jano mani Jano mani. Red Jano mani the Yeshurko the Sendo. The Mina cancer, the Gumba Canet. Chirku Gumba, or Chico. Gosung. Jenchak Pong Jette Lolan, the one not all manifested, turn on them bizon Atancha, Tishir. Mountain Kingdom Trappy, Zentrata, Jette Lolan, Shanchun to Billy Tongon, Shirong Bornala, Mucho good, Tishir. London and Mary, Jimbaton Jette Lolan, Randon Drip. Jandun, Dripperndoba. Certain men around the Mandrina, Jandun Dripperndoba. Commune, the Jipindamba, may by certain John Jetty, Long, given ocean over Jetty, Geonojetam, Jacton, Jimmy by Zopa Gumbajet, Randon Bajic Jibina, Angola, Measure Lockton, Sonda, Jokanton, Yondam Johnny, Sunjumba Jetty, Long, Jeanne up to Dumbilon, New Moon number of Jim, Zumijil, on the by Santon Gumbajet, Shirp Mena Paro, Zubajan to many. Tatan Dungeon, Corsum must be Shirp Gumbajet, Rangantra, Rangamat, on a Chubazuki, Jimmy Shirp. They should get the Rangantra, Turnet, more Jetty, Lolan Yang. Rangantra, Rangamat, on a Chubazuki, Chummy Shirp. They should get the Rangantra, Turnet, more Jetty, Lolan.
If you don't scrutinize your own faults, then it's very easy for you to then create misdeeds. So it's very important for you to scrutinize yourself. This is the practice of Bodhisattva. There was a book, I think it's called Power of Vulnerability. There was a professor from United States. She wrote it. She studied for a long period of time through research and study. She said that if you can then expose your vulnerability, if you are willing to then expose your imperfection, that is more healthy. Otherwise, if you just keep your all of your faults and all of your imperfections within yourself, it is very unhealthy by concealing it. This is a rather mundane or worldly research. It talks about how one who is more open, who is more open to expose their imperfections, they actually could tend to be more, have more strength, have more power, and more healthy and more positive. Therefore, I think we should also try to have the courage to face our imperfections and to have courage to face the faults that we've conducted. It's quite important to often scrutinize ourselves.
Chakbarpon Jetty Lolin, the Mutzik, Jansim Tree, Jero Tree Shots and Yamger. They should Janji Yutamogo with 6 pound Jetty Lolin.
And over here it says that if we use harsh words, we could harm others' mind, as well as we would lose the conduct of Bodhisattva. So we should then avoid the harsh words that would be harmful to others, and we should practice in such way, and this is the practice of Bodhisattva. People often talk about how to communicate with each other with positive words. But nowadays, maybe because of our previous habitual patterns from our past life and this life. Nowadays, we use lots of verbal violence. In Buddhism, we say that use vulgar language is very negative, such as is included in the resting the mind. I think this is the third volume, resting the mind in ease. This is the Sutrayana. This is Sutrayana part. That's the third one, because it has the first, second, and third. And inside this, it talks quite a bit about vulgar language. I didn't pick this on time. It's just recently printed, and that's why it's on my desk. This is quite important to study this. When I first come to... This is very important to keep these books. Back at my time, we usually would copy each other's book at night so that we can use it in the second day during the day in the class. At that time, we had to copy it by hands rather than nowadays you can save it into your computer as well as photocopy it and so on. Anyhow, the 10 unvirtuous deeds, the teachings on it is included in the third volume of this book. The commentary, rather. I think Michigan University as well as Harvard University, the professors studied different types of languages. Through their research, it says that the violence of the verbal violence, in fact, the harm could be tremendous. The way they said it is a bit different than how Buddhists say. They said that the harm of verbal violence could be detrimental to certain aspects, certain areas in our brain. First of all is our cognition area. Second is the emotional management area. And the third one is the analytical area of our brain. All of those brain areas, the neurons and the brain cells would be permanently harmed through the violence words. Some say that harmful words are like nails that's nailed into a piece of wood. After you hammer the nail into a piece of wood, even after you pull the nail out, the hole stays there. Just like nowadays, people who are really fragile, who has this rather weak-minded people, then they tend to remember other people's negative comments forever. Maybe because the nail of their verbal violence harmed their brain areas forever and left a hole there. There are people who really are not good at memorizing. They never even memorize the 37 practices of Bodhisattva. They even can't memorize the 37 stanzas, but they couldn't remember what I said to them, how I scolded him about a decade or 2 decades ago. He can remember that. If you can use such energy into memorizing the Dharma, then it could be quite incredible, isn't it? When we use words to harm others, it's very easy. Especially nowadays, people who are very sensitive and very fragile, very weak in their minds, they remember other people's negative comments very easily. So that's one aspect. In short, no matter what you're doing, by examining always the status of one's mind with continuous mindfulness and alertness to bring about the good of others. This is the practice of all the Bodhisattva. It's very important to examine your own mind. What's the status of your mind now? And then have the right mindfulness with you all the time. Of course, I understand it's quite difficult to maintain right mindfulness all the time in this modern time because we're bombarded with all the information coming from cell phones and computer and internet and so on. It is reported that nowadays we have 45 million people who are dwelt or really having this grasping towards short clips of videos. Young people nowadays, they use cell phones the same as the seniors. The seniors, they cannot read very clearly of their small cell phone, but they would put it far away and then they will press their buttons. Some seniors, they're like that too. They're very much dwelled in the realm of virtual reality of this internet. Same as parents. When the parents feel that their children are bothering them, then they would throw an iPad or cell phone to the children so that they can play on the cell phone. There was a book back in 1990s or 80s. There was a book called Toto Chan, The Little Girl at Window, by a Japanese author. It talks about how a little girl studied in a rather unique school, but the teaching education is rather guiding children to create curiosity and interest and beauty towards this world. And lots of people, old and young, they are all, they have such admiration for such type of education. So I really think that teachers and educators, I think it's quite important to lead the children, the next generation, in such a way to teach them about the importance of nature and the curiosity towards this world that we live in. But nowadays, the education are not like that. There are corporations and big companies, they forcefully ask their employees to not use cell phones during work time. But it's very difficult nowadays because it's such a habit. For me, I think it's very difficult for me to not use it because lots of things are communicated through my phones. But if I use it, it wastes lots of time. When I notice lots of our practitioners who's participating in our Dharma assembly, I see that majority of you are participating diligently and one-pointedly, but some of you are rather distracted. What I'm saying is that I really hope that you can learn to be to have right mindfulness and watch your mind as much as you can. But in the future, it's very hard to say how our age will take us. Yesterday, a young girl who was blind, at first I was really upset and thinking that out of so many people, she cannot really see me. But I noticed that she's really strong and she's very optimistic and full of hope for this life. And from that aspect, I felt that she's probably more lucky than lots of us because she was so diligently chanting the mantra and she saw the life that is even more profound and meaningful than people who have eyes, because nowadays our eyes and ears are covered by the overflooding of information, and we cannot see the true face of this life anymore. And nowadays if we try to remind ourselves that, okay, I should have right mindfulness, not see my cell phone, but we'll put it away for a few seconds, and then our hands just kind of reaching for cell phone again, isn't it? Our right mindfulness is so weak in this life, in this time.
Kursum number to be shirji, Jean Getty Loglan, Namdo, Tom Jurnal Sombiton, Tambanam Gilson, Jim Johnny, Getty, Namji Loglan, some children, Getty Lamla, Lum to Tunuk, Lojuman, Jean, Jurum, Kibati, Devil Majim, Dodon Tambi, Son of Timbi, Getty, Namji Loglan, Getty, Loglan, Termin Lobrasan, going to Getty, Lapchin, Loman down the Tompokai, and Gardamam de Las Onibit. Tambanam gives over that doctor, television, given Joakan, Tondo, Consortium to Simso, Chiton, Talamani, Sharism, Contedom, Sombra, Jibanda, Rajala, Pambi, Tunda, Londa, Rubbermala, Zumba, Tomedi, Gungerchi, and Puto, Jarva, War, for the Riba.
37 practices of the Bodhisattva is the text that is requested to be recited and remembered by Pontsog Rinpoche, same as the 3 aspects of the path. Tomorrow I'm going to give the oral transmission of Song of Victory. Those are the ones that's requested to be memorized by heart by Pontsog Rinpoche.
Simchin Jari Sheriff Sanchi Jati Lolan Yan Dungan Mali Dodin, Dolation to Basan Jam and Zen and Trotation of the Janji Dungan, Yant of Jati Lolan Gazi Dolaton, Martin Nazo Bartons, Jabrship, Drona, Yan, Chambersen Jaslarian, Teniki, Yondam Jobar Jati Lolan, Roman Deepaway and Gazi Gamsonim, Jajan Single Mana, they are gave Shikin, the Shiki keeper on the Jati Lolan Yan.
I think I chanted this, didn't I? You didn't hear it. Your ear consciousness is going bad. Yesterday, I saw someone who lost the eye faculty, and today your ear